Now you know. Okay, we're recording now, Sabina. Would you like me to begin?
I would, yeah.
So as we begin this meeting, we do acknowledge and give respect to the indigenous peoples who have stewarded these lands for many thousands of years. And in particular, we recognize and acknowledge that we are on the ancestral unceded lands of Lekwungen-speaking and Wasanic peoples, part of the Coast Salish group of nations. And we give thanks for their stewardship, and we make this acknowledgement not just out of form, but as a commitment to a working towards a new relationship, a transformed relationship for us who are of settler and colonial descent with the indigenous peoples of these lands.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm just trying to actually see myself. Oh, I can't see myself. That's okay. It's a very difficult day to be meeting, obviously, because of the situation in Kamloops, as you all know, where I grew up. My name, well, okay, first we have a lot of work to do. We're going to find a lot more of these graves, I think, across Canada. And for us, it's going to allow us to learn the truth and heal together and create a different country. So as you know, my name is JIndi Singh. I was your candidate last time in the federal election, and I will be again. We've been working hard at Saanich-Gulf Islands to grow our team and to host events like this one so that we can get to know all the people in our area and things that they're doing. So we've had several events so far, and we will keep doing them as we go forward. It is my honor today, and Saanich-Gulf Islands' honor, to introduce to you JIndi Singh and Khalsa aid. Now, as you know, I'm first generation Canadian. My family was, my parents were born in India, and my grandparents were extremely religious. And though I'm not, they passed on through our culture a very important feeling that we all share together when we come from the Sikhi culture. And that is a saying called seva. And we all take it very seriously. And seva is meaning service. So that we, through our service, we can learn about each other and help support our community. So Khalsa Aid has been an incredible resource to all of us, and to be able to practice seva and to learn more about Sikhi culture. Khalsa Aid was started in 1990 in Britain, and JIndi is now the Canadian National Director of Khalsa Aid. He will tell you more about that. And it's been in Canada since 2017, I believe. And last I heard there's 13 chapters across the country, but I believe there are probably more now, or we're working on more. I have had the great honor of working with JIndi in a number of areas in town. Locally, we have provided food to people who needed food. We've provided clothing to people who needed clothing. And so Khalsa Aid joins up with a whole bunch of groups around the area, and we provide what we can to help out any causes that are going on in our area. The Khalsa Aid motto is one that I will carry with me very strongly, and I think many cultures in the world do, and that is recognizing all humanity as one. And I think when we start to recognize all humanity as one, we will start to be able to really speak to each other and create the world we want to live in. So I think that's it. without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you JIndi Singh. Please welcome him with our little NDP hands. And welcome to JIndi. And please tell us all about Khalsa Aid. And we know that they're also having a major problem with COVID-19 at the moment, my family included. And so he's going to talk to us about that and all of the other things that Khalsa Aid is doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think first I want to give condolences on behalf of Khalsa Aid, you know, to the families and the community members of these children who were found in Kamloops. I know a lot of people have used words like shocked and discovered, and I mean, anyone who's even read just a few words of what's happened in our history here will know that this is not a discovery and it's not something that's well unknown. So as horrific as it is, I sincerely hope it leads to doing a lot more work at the other residential schools and allowing these children to come home. So it's a very difficult time. Also for us as Sikhs, the beginning of June, June the 1st, is also kind of a solemn occasion. It's the day as Sikhs where we remember the Indian Army attack on the Golden Temple or Harmandir Sahib, and the number of lives that were lost then, and then the subsequent, you know, decade or so after that of people going missing and dying. So that's something we also remember. So it is a solemn time. It's a lot to carry. But, you know, out of some of these traumas and out of the history that we have as Sikhs, you know, we believe in what we call Chardi Kala, always remaining in high spirits despite what's happening around us. And we've kind of transformed that into, you know, many aspects, but for Khalsa Aid, you know, it's really working hard and going beyond ourselves and trying to help our, you know, fellow human being in whatever they're kind of needing help with. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if I can do a presentation. So, oh no, it says host has disabled the participant screen sharing. So I'm not too sure if it's possible to turn that on. If not,
I'll make you a co-host, JIndi.
Thank you.
Oh, now perfect. You can try again.
Thank you. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Perfect. I can't see anybody, I can just see the screen. So as mentioned, our kind of saying or motto comes from actually our 10th Guru. In the original is Manus ki jaat sabhe ke pehchanbo, recognize the whole human race as one. And as Sabine had mentioned, we've been working just over 20 years now. We started in 1999. We're an international humanitarian relief organization. We provide aid and assistance across the globe to those who are either impacted by natural disasters or civil unrest and conflict. And now we have chapters not only in the UK where we were founded, but also in Canada, USA, India, Iraq, and Australia. And across Canada right now, we have 13 city level chapters, which provide aid to local vulnerable communities and kind of partner with local community organizations. So here in Victoria, for example, we've worked with Our Place, Mustard Seed, Threshold Housing, Verks, and a number of other organizations in providing either aid or assistance, and especially a lot more since the pandemic began. And we have a few newer chapters, but they're not officially chapters until, you know, the team are organized, as Sabina was mentioning. So we'll probably add a few more on. We're trying to go a little bit more north in the country because we feel that's where there's going to be a lot more climate change impacts, and to have teams there ready. Recently, we had a First Nation that had to evacuate just in the last day or two because of flooding. So having teams that is a bit further north allows us to help those communities as well. At the heart of Khalsa, like we mentioned, is recognizing the whole human race as one. Community spirit, even though we're a Sikh-based organization, our operations in some respects are secular. We don't turn anyone away who wants to come and assist with us. We have a number of people who belong to other faiths who work with us across the globe. Whether it's floods here in Montreal, we've had grocery needs during the pandemic, providing aid to kind of First Nations who've been impacted by floods, and forest fires, or providing food security during the pandemic. We try our best to help our neighbors and our local neighbors. And from within Canada, our team members have also gone to a number of countries and done international work. And we've gone to Iraq. In Iraq, our focus is actually in Kurdistan, Kurdistani Iraq. And we've worked very closely in assisting the Yazidi community, which suffered a genocide due to ISIS. A lot of the men were slaughtered and killed, so it's predominantly women in that community that need assistance. And also with the collapse of ISIS, a few years ago, we've seen a flood of refugees coming in from Syria who've also needed assistance. So we're working quite a bit there. One of the areas that I think is a little bit more personal to myself, living here in Canada, and it's not a spelling mistake. We do mean reconciliation, because that's a term one of the elders with the Ahousaht Nation mentioned to us. We have partnered with the Ahousaht Nation on what we've called the Maggie Sutlej Ahousaht Project. It's a 5-year funded program to support Ahousaht youth. There's been a few delays with it due to the pandemic, and we're hoping once things have come back to whatever the new normal is going to be and we can move around, that we'll be able to restart that program. And it's actually in memory of a young child whose real name we don't know, but has essentially been called Maggie Sutlej Ahousaht. And what actually happened here was, following a war between the Royal Navy and the Ahousaht, which saw their village destroyed and a number of people killed, they found this young child, and Admiral Denham's wife, he was the admiral of the Royal Navy ship there at the time, decided to adopt this child and took her away. And they named her after the ship, HMS Sutlej, and after the admiral's wife, and one of the people on the ship actually as well. She actually stayed on the ship, never left, and a year or two later, and this was in the 1860s, a year or two later, passed away off the coast of Chile, and was buried out at sea. The reason we had a connection to it is HMS Sutlej was named after a river in the Punjab, and the vast majority of Sikhs come from the Punjab. That's where our faith was founded. And the ship was actually named after the river because there was a battle in the 1840s, what's now become known as the Anglo-Sikh Wars, between the Sikh nation and the East India Company. And with the Sikh nation, the Lahore Darbar eventually losing, and Punjab becoming colonized by the East India Company, in celebration, they named this ship HMS Sutlej. So we felt, a river that actually has a lot of historical significance to us, and a number of historical gurdwaras or Sikh places of worship are there. There's a lot of history related to our gurus there, that we felt, to have this name associated with something so awful, thousands of miles away from the Punjab, it's something we found difficult when we learned of this story, and decided to reach out to the Ahousaht Nation so we could do something. And that's, for us, has been a blessing. We've made some friends there who we feel like a family to us, and we're hoping to be able to complete this project as soon as possible once this pandemic is over. As far as the pandemic is concerned, most people have, complained about being stuck at home. For us, it's actually been what I would say is the most busiest year we've ever had. We have, across this country, provided, and across the globe, provided hundreds of thousands of meals and groceries, hygiene products, back to school supplies for children who are at home, and a whole host of other items. Supported a lot of food banks. Families who had never visited a food bank in their life were suddenly needing to go, and it put a lot of strain on the food banks here in Canada. So we helped with those. Some of the food banks, I'll be honest, weren't culturally appropriate for kind of the minority communities that were here. They weren't used to that type of food. So we assisted a number of food banks in providing more kind of culturally appropriate food, something that those families could use. And we also, to this day, are doing in a few locations now a kind of a grocery delivery service to those who either have COVID or are kind of isolating at home and cannot get out. Obviously, this time last year, that situation was much worse, with thousands of people being assisted who just couldn't get out. But now it has reduced, but that need is still there. We're also helping a number of students, and particularly international students, who've had to, pay a very large fee to come to this country and study, and hoping that they would be able to work, the 20 hours that they're allowed to assist themselves financially, but have not been able to because of the pandemic. So there's been a lot of strain on those students, and we've been assisting them as well. So as everyone knows, in India, we had a very large COVID crisis that started out of Delhi predominantly, and then it has spread to other areas. There, our teams in Delhi started providing oxygen concentrators to those in need. The concentrators were really there to help those patients from not having to go to the hospital, that if they could stay at home and have oxygen supply that would assist their oxygen levels, then it would put less burden on the hospitals. And that's what the team did. They've now created an app that allows them to do this delivery service in Delhi, Punjab, and Jammu as well. And on top of that, about 2,000 plus concentrators have been given to individuals and mostly to organizations across the country. And within India, the supply chain for oxygen concentrators had run dry. So we out here have been purchasing and airlifting these supplies to them. And it has been a massive undertaking for the team there. And, we've also had to really organize them to ensure that they also didn't, come down. A few people have unfortunately come down with COVID, but they're okay. But, the vast majority of the volunteers have had to do shifts and make sure they're properly, covered with respect to PPE. And sometimes the team that's unpacking, like you see here, is different from the team that's delivering, just to keep a bit of distance between them all. One of the other issues that came up is in India, the vast majority cremate their bodies, and access to firewood had become a very large issue as it was running out, and the price of firewood had shot up as well. So for the poorer families, it was a very long waiting game to have their family member cremated in a dignified manner. So we just recently have bought, I think it's gas powered furnaces that will allow those cremations to occur in a dignified manner and a little bit more quickly than with firewood, so that the kind of, I don't know how else to say, but the lineup of bodies waiting to be cremated can be reduced. It's pretty morbid, but it really does help those families there who are suffering. One of the other projects that we started is we did have a lot of doctors out here in the West. Many of them are COVID specialists and ER specialists who were willing to help provide assistance to India. And what we realized was the best thing to do was to have knowledge sharing sessions between the doctors in the West and doctors in India. So I think in the last webinar I attended, there was nearly 300 doctors on the line asking a number of questions. And that one was about clinical pathways. There was another one a few days after, which we weren't organizing, but it was around fungal disease. So we're providing this kind of knowledge sharing with the doctors there and assisting them as best we can. Not everything obviously works. You know, here we've tried to keep people at home for as long as possible and then only go to hospitals when they absolutely need to. And the same applies in India, but sometimes they don't have the option of going to a local hospital because either it's very far away or the hospitals are overrun with patients and burdened with patients and don't have any beds. So there are obviously differences in how health can be provided, but when patients are in the hospitals, the various clinical pathways that can be provided to them to assist them, and especially when they have comorbidities such as diabetes and the impact that has on COVID, there's been a lot of great knowledge sharing between the doctors. And I believe that they've probably got a WhatsApp group or something where they're sharing information as well. And that's had a positive effect. And my personal desire is to have the doctors spread that knowledge as far and wide as possible. Some of you may have heard that there's what's called black fungus that started occurring in patients, and mostly that's because of the overuse of steroids. So it's another area where the public health officials there and the doctors there can kind of inform the patients. Some of them are buying medicine off the black market, unfortunately, that thinking that the use of steroids will help them with COVID isn't the right solution. And sometimes, you know, they're in hospital care and they do need steroids, and that makes complete sense, but not always. So there's a lot of these little things that, you know, do build up to something good if you can assist as best as possible. And our strength is in our volunteers. I mean, across the globe, we still probably don't have more than 24 employees. The vast majority of us are volunteers. And as I mentioned, our volunteers come from all walks of life. You know, it's their dedication, their integrity, their humanity that we cherish, not necessarily their background or their status or where they're from. This image is of a volunteer. He's actually the lead of our Montreal team, and we were there, I think, in a few years back when the waters at the river there were overflowing, and the team, we had about 20 to 40, depending on which day it was, for about a week or so helping, and I think they ended up saving probably over about 100 homes with sandbagging and things like that. And in fact, earlier this year, one of our Canadian MPs and a number of other politicians actually here in Canada nominated Khalsa Aid for the Nobel Peace Prize. It was quite the surprise. We weren't obviously expecting to be nominated. Our heads were busy in the pandemic. But it is a testimony to the work of our volunteers, and also our founder, Ravi Singh, who's, you know, has dedicated his life to this since 1999. He's been working quite a bit and has had a number of health issues recently, but is still the driving force behind making sure that we reach out to as many people as possible with assistance and aid. So that's just a brief on Khalsa aid. I can somehow stop sharing.
Thank you, JIndi. That was amazing and interesting. I hope everybody got to learn something.
Yeah.
I think are we going to stop recording and see if there's any questions?
That's exactly what we're going to do. I was waiting for your cue. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.